What if you knew that failure is impossible? Would you act differently? Would you engage in your journey more courageously, more confidently, with less self-sabotage, with less of holding yourself back and getting in your own way? Well, I'm here to tell you that failure is impossible. I received a message recently from a person telling me that they are overwhelmed by this fear that they will fail to become who they're supposed to be. And therefore, they're struggling to put in that daily and weekly effort because of the idea that maybe all of this effort will still fail to make them the person that they are supposed to become. So we are now talking about the journey of your life as a whole, the journey of your personal growth, the journey of becoming the person that you can and should become. We are not talking about the fear of failing to reach a specific goal. I want to achieve X in this amount of time. We are talking about your journey as a whole. That sense of being overwhelmed because I know there is this person far better in many different ways than the person that I am right now, far better, and I know that I can become that person, but what if I fail? Okay, how is failure impossible? Because this journey is so vague, and you have no idea how many times the vision is going to change on the way forward, that it is impossible. It is impossible to fail to reach a goal that is ever changing as long as you are moving forward. Let me give you an example. In December 2019, when I committed to starting to write consistently every day online, I didn't have a specific goal, but if you ask me what is my long-term vision, what is the dream outcome, it would be to become a writer who has very little or no contact with his audience. It would be to write, to express myself, for that to be read by people, for that to hopefully move people, but that's it. No closer contact with the readers. That would be my fantasy at that point. A fantasy of an introvert who didn't know as much about himself as he thought he knew. Today, when actually most of my time is spent directly communicating with people, one-on-one or in group settings, today I can tell you that if somehow that fantasy came true, if somehow my writing took off to such an extent where the trajectory would go in a different way, where I would end up being this writer who doesn't communicate with or has no direct contact with his audience, and therefore doesn't move on to work directly with people. If that came true, it would be a curse disguised as a blessing. I can tell you today that I know with certainty the person I'm supposed to become, either throughout his whole life or for a decent portion of his life journey, is supposed to directly communicate with humans, is supposed to spend thousands of hours in close conversations with humans to get to know humanity better, get to know himself better, to see up close what it's like to contribute to a transformation of another human, what it's like to witness up close someone becoming more engaged in their life. That wouldn't be accessible to a person who started off writing and their writing became relatively quickly immensely successful, and they were able to create and maintain that distance between themselves and their readers. My story is just an example. I know many more people who had a vision and thought this is the person that I'm supposed to become. And then they see along the way that the vision changes, the goals change, the overall structure of the journey changes. The essence of the journey pretty often stays the same, because that essence comes out of your essence, comes out of your guiding values, your natural tendencies. but the essence is not the same as the structure, the details of the journey. So, bring it back to you. How could you be afraid of failure when failure as a concept cannot exist on a journey that changes continuously? As long as you are actually taking those steps forward, the journey will be changing. Meaning, to the extent that you are moving, it is impossible to fail. Because to the extent that you are moving, new context is brought to your life and to your journey. This new context leads to adjustment of the journey for it to be more relevant to the person that you are right now and the person that you're supposed to become. Forward movement, or even attempts at forward movement, give context. Context changes the journey for it to be more specific and more relevant. And then, because the journey keeps becoming more specific and more relevant for that particular chapter of your life, it means that there is no fixed idea and fixed image that will either be reached or not. There is no such thing. Now, let's bring it back to what that person asked and what many of you can relate to. How can I put that daily and weekly effort? Because I'm overwhelmed by the fear that none of it will be enough, none of it will lead to me becoming who I'm supposed to be. We can now see that that's an idea that doesn't make sense. And I'm not judging anyone for thinking that way, because I also thought in that way previously. So when I say it doesn't make sense, it is perfectly human and natural for you to be overwhelmed and to have these ideas, but we now see that if we look closely at our journey and how it functions, how it behaves, when we engage in it, we see that it doesn't make sense. And there is no need to be afraid that you will not become the person that you're supposed to be. Because literally, with every step that you make, you are reinforcing the nature of the journey, which is the journey is meant to be lived, not to be completed or solved. So live your journey, friends. Stay strong. Love life. Never feel sorry for yourself. Jump into your journey and know that as long as you're living it, you're succeeding in it. Light that raging fire in your heart and always go beyond. Thank you.